Next story I wanted to talk about is about this pastor named Ken Peters. I came across this interesting clip of his. You know what? I'll let it speak for itself. Let's watch the clip. Late March 2022. It's pretty recent.
We have a guest who is running for office. In case you were thinking, whoa, you're not allowed to endorse candidates at church. You're at the wrong church. This is Patriot Church. We endorse whoever we want to endorse. And you're like, well, what about your 501c3? Well, two things there. Number one, I had a 501c3 in Spokane. That never stopped me.
Yeah, that's a good point. I just want to address this real fast. The reason that churches aren't allowed to explicitly endorse political candidates, that's the rule as stated. The reason they're not allowed to do that is because of the Johnson Amendment in U.S. tax code. 501c3 is the subcategory that covers nonprofit organizations, including churches. And under the 501c3 like subchapter or whatever, it explains that if you're a nonprofit organization who is tax exempt, you can't explicitly oppose or endorse specific candidates for political office. That's the rule. You feel free to, but you're going to lose tax exempt status, or you risk losing tax exempt status. That's the rule. It's called the Johnson Amendment in U.S. tax code. Unfortunately, the IRS has not been pursuing prosecution against these organizations for violating the Johnson Amendment. So they can pretty much say anything they want without fear of reprisal, without fear of losing their tax-exempt status. And as a matter of fact, a lot of organizations out there, a lot of churches have been doing just that, holding campaign events at church for political candidates. Here's one, Jack Hibbs. He's a megachurch pastor. You guys remember Larry Elder? He was running against Gavin Newsom in a recent election for California governor. Jack Hibbs held a full-blown campaign event for Larry Elder and collected donations for the guy for his campaign at the end of his sermon.
A particular party has had absolute unchecked rule and have crushed this state on every angle. You know, today everybody's talking about Antifa and critical race theory and...
Everybody, meaning him and his little group of extremists.
Critical race theory and BLM. I've seen churches now, instead of putting the gospel on the marquee of the church, that church now says Black Lives Matter.
You know, everything he's said up to this point is actually legal. Everything he's said up to now is legal, and he can keep tax-exempt status up to this moment.
But they got the acronym wrong. BLM. It really means because Larry matters. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Larry Elder this morning.
Larry Elder came out on stage and he held a full-blown campaign rally at his church and collected donations for Larry Elder, a political candidate, during his election. That is illegal. But guess what? It was never prosecuted. That happened in August, mid-August 2021. And as this guy says from Patriot Church, Ken Peters,
that never stopped me.
It never stopped him before. Even though he was a 501c3 then, he didn't care. He just did it anyways. It's because the IRS is not pursuing legal action against them and not removing tax-exempt status like they're supposed to be. That's it. That's the problem.
We started this church here in Tennessee. We are not a 501c3, so we can do whatever we want. Whatever we want. We're a free church. Feels good to be free. Now, the 501c3 never stopped me, but at least I don't even have to think about it now. We're 508(1)A, which is in the IRS code. It's totally awesome and cool. We're a free church, so we do endorse candidates.
Okay, so I looked into this, and from what I understand, FFRF has sent a formal request to the IRS to have this church investigated for violating the Johnson Amendment. That's my understanding. The Johnson Amendment is under 501c3 of the tax code, I think. I'm not a tax lawyer. I do not fully understand exactly how this works. So, take everything that I say here with a grain of salt. But I did look it up out of curiosity. Section 508 of the tax code is just a special rules section for 501c3 organizations. So 508(1)A is just a special set of rules for 501c3s. From my understanding, you would still file as a 501c3, but 508(1)A would define certain things about your organization. Like I said, I'm not a tax lawyer, so take everything that I say with a grain of salt. I've just run a business myself and understand exactly enough to get by, just barely. But I went through the tax code, the section 508, out of curiosity, to just look through and try to understand exactly what it's saying as this special rules subsection to 501c3 organizations. And according to this, it's actually 508c1a, not 508(1)A as he called it.
We're 508(1)A.
There is no 508(1)A. You would have to list another subsection. It's 508c1a, from my understanding. And under 508 subsection c1a, it says, basically, subsection C is a list of exceptions, and 1 is mandatory exceptions, and then A is churches, their integrated auxiliaries, and conventions or associations of churches, or, and this is B, any organization which is not a private foundation as defined in section 509A, and the gross receipts of which in each taxable year are normally not more than $5,000. So I think 508C1A is just a subsection that kind of more clearly defines 501c3 organizations. Like I said, I am not a tax lawyer. I don't fully understand it. But what I do know is that FFRF did formally send a letter to the IRS requesting that this organization, Patriot Church as they call themselves, is investigated for violating the Johnson Amendment. So take that for what you will. But since we have this guy up, I figured we'd just take a gander through some of the other stuff that he says. So what was he doing around January 6th? That seems like a good day to start on, right? This is January 3rd, 2021, just days before the January 6th rally happened, where there was a riot at the Capitol and people broke in and all that other stuff happened. Days before that happened, this is what he was doing at church. January 3rd, 2021.
If you can, make it. Please come to D.C., all right? Get there maybe on Tuesday or get there early on Wednesday. And I think the stuff starts around 10 in the morning, all right? So you want to be within striking distance. Listen, I think there's going to be 5 million people there.
Complete nonsense. Not going to be 5 million people there, but whatever. Not even going to nitpick here. He was trying to get his church to show up to the Capitol on January 6th so that they could take part in the events taking place there. He actually had a speech at the January 5th Stop the Steal rally at the Capitol, as a matter of fact. Listen to this.
But I see a bunch of people here that will say, no, we are not going to allow the enemy to destroy this beautiful and great land that our forefathers gave to us. We will rise up in this time and say, like Paul Revere, the leftists are coming. The leftists are coming. The leftists are coming.
Yeah, all through this rally, it was all speech that was disturbingly close to war speeches. People were talking about 1776 nonstop. It was really disturbing stuff all through this whole event. And supposedly at this event, according to Ken Peters himself, he says Mike Lindell paid for him to get to the rally on his private jet. He sent his private jet to pick Ken Peters up, supposedly, according to Ken Peters. Let me give you a more clear idea of who this guy is. We know where he was on January 6th. We know that Trump is part of his religious ideology. Check this one out, May 7th, 2021.
Are we willing to die for the Bible? Are we willing to die for Jesus?
That's extreme language, but it's within normal parameters for some Christians. For people on the more extreme end of Christianity, I've heard that before. I heard that from Jehovah's Witnesses a lot. are we willing to die for Jesus, basically, right? It gets worse.
That's what determines whether or not we are real patriots.
Whoa, hold on. Patriots. Where did patriots come into this? Patriotism is all about politics and your country and nothing to do with the Bible, really, right? I thought.
Real Christians, when we come to those moments, when your life is on the line, and we might get to that point someday as Americans, so we need to be ready for that. Now we're fighting our...
Once again, he's mixing Americans in with religion. It's almost like he's started two ideologies and melded them together. He's got his patriotic identity and his religious identity, and he's forcing them to join. When you join two different personalities or two different personality identities together like that, they never fit together quite right. Not exactly. For example, the United States is a capitalist country, right? Ostensibly, on the surface, it's a capitalist country. And the Bible, or Jesus anyway, was very, very socialist, wasn't he? There's a cognitive dissonance that has to take place when you meld those two identities together. They don't fit together perfectly. You have to give something up on one of them. Part of being a patriot, a Christian patriot in the United States today, is being absolutely obsessed with gun rights, obsessed with the Second Amendment. Do you think Jesus would be in favor of the Second Amendment? There is just an incredible level of cognitive dissonance that has to take place for you to consider yourself a Christian patriot. Not just a Christian patriot, though, that from Patriot Church, but a Christian patriot who's willing to die for his beliefs.
We're fighting our best here at Patriot Church to keep our freedoms in this land.
Nobody's trying to take your freedoms, man.
This land was originally founded for people like this. People came from all over the world escaping religious persecution, and they found refuge and they found freedom here. That's how...
You know why people were leaving other areas for religious freedom? Because there were state churches in some areas that were forcing people to be their version of Christianity or their version of whatever else. People came here to escape mandated religion, to escape mandated Christianity or mandated whatever. And this guy is advocating that we go back to that. We escaped it, and now he wants to bring us back to that. And he's using the fact that we escaped it as a justification to reestablish it.
Freedom here. That's how America started. Now, we weren't perfect, right? But many of the people that came to this land, most of the people that came to this land, were people just like this, who just wanted to worship God without fear of death and persecution.
I mean, not for nothing, but I'm currently, right now, being persecuted for being an atheist. We all are. I mean, we are a minority group who is constantly persecuted for our lack of religious beliefs. And I've actually been physically attacked over it. I'm sure you guys remember just last year. I mean, in fact, it was almost a year ago now exactly, late March 2021, when I was attacked by a bunch of Trump supporters for reporting a teacher for attacking atheists in the classroom during health class. That was actual, real religious persecution that took place. And this guy is absolutely obsessed with the idea that he is religiously persecuted. It's ridiculous and embarrassing.
So we want to do our best to keep it that way. Amen.
So that's who Ken Peters is from Patriot Church. That's who we're dealing with. I went through one of his sermons just yesterday, just recently. I wanted to see what other types of things he had to say. This sermon came out February 27th, 2022. I have a few clips from it. So check this one out. In this clip, he's talking about going on a Christian podcast called Love Thy Neighbor. And he realized quickly that Love Thy Neighbor was not Christian enough for him. Listen to this.
What they would do is play a little clip. They'd play a little clip and then comment on it. And they'd mock me, and they were sarcastic, and that's what they did the whole show, all right? So I challenged them to a live discussion. We'll see if they're brave enough to do it. They're probably too busy loving thy neighbor.
I love how he mocks that. Like, the Bible literally says you're supposed to love thy neighbor, and he's mocking it. Didn't Jesus say that? I'm just saying. And he's making fun of people, seemingly, for loving thy neighbor. That is mind-blowing. Let's listen to the first part one more time.
What they would do is play a little clip. They'd play a little clip and then comment on it. And they'd mock me, and they were sarcastic, and that's what they did the whole show, all right?
Look, I'm sorry if you don't like it that people react to the things that you say. But if you don't like that, if you don't want people to react to the things you say, don't say completely outrageous, absurd, evil things. Don't do stuff like that, and I'll have nothing to react to. Of course, he's talking about the Love Thy Neighbor podcast, that Christian podcast, but still, I'm doing the exact same thing they were doing. I'm not going to put up with you saying outrageous, evil, messed up stuff and just let it stand. I'm going to react to it. That's just what it is, man. This next clip is from the same sermon that he gave, February 27th. Check this one out.
We have an even bigger enemy, I think, an even more dangerous foe right here in our own nation. And that is the radical leftists. Now, it's such a dichotomy because people think, well, don't you love them? Don't you want to reach them for Jesus? Absolutely. We want them to find the gospel, receive Christ, come to the Lord. But just because you love somebody doesn't mean you let them take over your home.
I'm sorry, take over your home? I have no intentions of taking over your home. What are you even talking about? He is so wrapped up in this culture war. He can't see past his nose. He is so blinded by the culture war, by hating his enemy, by owning the libs. Like I said, it's Patriot Church. Donald Trump is part of his theology. I mean, that's stated. Donald Trump and republicanism and extremism, it's all part of his religious theology. It's all in there together.
So we love them. We want them to get saved. But just because I love somebody doesn't mean you can just come into my home and pillage my family.
I have no intentions of pillaging your family. What are you even talking about, man? I guess you could say I'm about as close to radical left as you've ever met, probably, or ever dealt with before. Although I don't consider myself radical left, I'm sure he would. I have no interest in pillaging your home or taking your family. Is that what he said?
And pillage my family.
Oh, wait. No, pillage the family. Well, what was I going to do to his home?
Because I love somebody doesn't mean you can just come into my home.
Oh, come into it, okay? He doesn't want me coming into his home or pillaging his family, or vice versa. Doesn't want me pillaging his home or coming into his family. So now that's established, we understand where he stands with his family and his home. Let's keep listening. Oh, God, I'm sorry. I gotta stop. That was a funny joke, I thought. I felt it was a funny joke. Maybe it wasn't as funny. Maybe I'm putting too big a puff in my own petticoat with that joke, but I thought it was funny. Wait till you hear what he has to say about the rainbow. He gets downright upset.
Even the rainbow that the left has stolen and used as a symbol of immorality and lasciviousness. It's like trampling almost on the blood of Christ, trampling on a symbol of covenant. God hung the rainbow in the sky as a covenant that he made with man.
All right, let's keep listening. Oh, he's talking about Mike Lindell here, by the way.
Fox won't interview him. Newsmax won't interview Mike Lindell. He has what he believes, and I know him. I trust him.
Why? Why do you trust him? Is it just because he sent a private jet to pick you up for the January 6th rally? Dude, Mike Lindell has done so much for Donald Trump, like, he doesn't even know. Mike Lindell should honestly be Donald Trump's best friend right now for everything that he did for him. It's crazy. But aside from that, there's no reason to trust Mike Lindell. He's like one of the least trustworthy people alive, honestly. I don't say that because I, hate Mike Lindell or anything. I absolutely don't. I don't hate anybody for anything. Dude's just totally disconnected from reality.
I trust him. He has proof that there was election fraud.
Nope, he does not. He does not have proof of that, actually, as a matter of fact. He claims to have had proof for that, but he's never produced that proof. He's never produced anything to prove that there was election fraud on a systemic level that could have changed the election.
Oh, that couldn't happen. Really? Come on. Hillary, it was just proven in the Durham report that Hillary, right, hired people to hack into computers. You think the left wouldn't do that? You think it's beyond the left to hack into computers to take power?
That's not true, actually. And usually I would just let this go and just say this isn't true and move on with the story. And I'm actually running a little bit low on time, but I do want to touch on this because this is a hot culture war issue at the moment, heavily misunderstood. I want to make sure that everybody's fully aware of what the Durham report didn't and did say. So let's take a look at this PolitiFact article. It's actually a fact check, a rating on a statement by Rick Scott. Rick Scott is a Florida congressman of some sort. He said the latest with the Durham report is that the Clinton campaign actually spied on the president of the United States. It's false. Let's read the article and see exactly what made it false. Like, why is it false? What is the Durham report? Here's the condensed version of it. A recent court filing by Justice Department Special Counsel John Durham alleges that a lawyer linked to the Hillary Clinton campaign shared with the CIA internet traffic data concerning networks near the White House, Trump Tower, and other places associated with Trump. The lawyer's meeting with the CIA took place in early February 2017, but there's no evidence that the data he passed along was gathered after Trump became president. There's also no evidence that the data was obtained illegally, nor did the filing suggest that it was. The filing also didn't say that the Clinton campaign directed the effort, as Scott claimed. So there was a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of obfuscation. They were trying to make it seem like Hillary spied on Trump, the president of the U.S. It's just not true. Complete misrepresentation of everything that actually happened. And eventually, Durham, the guy who filed the report, had to kind of distance himself from a lot of the right-wing claims because a lot of them are really going off the rails. They're making a lot of bizarre, wacky claims. Seriously, real wacky stuff coming out of there. Not a word I usually say, but in Jim Brewer's honor, I'm starting to adopt it.
I'm a wacky. Let's hear about my wacky, bizarre video.
To cut to the chase, what he said here about the Durham report, it's not true. It's simply not true.
Now, I'm still believing for a comeback. I still believe that there's more of us than there are of them. I still believe that they won by cheating and not by legitimate, actual votes. I still believe that. I still have hope.
Okay, all of that was incorrect. There are not more of them than there are of us. There are a lot of evangelical extremists, so-called patriots, quote-unquote, out there in the country. There are a lot of them, but they are still the minority. They're still in the minority. They're just a loud minority. It feels like there are way more of them than there are of us. There are not. Also, what he said there at the end,
Still believe that they won by cheating and not...
Yeah, that's not true either. Nothing about that is true. That is completely inaccurate. But this guy lives in La La Land. This guy has worked Trump into his theology. He is part of his religion at this point. It's completely unhinged stuff. He actually has a co-pastor at Patriot Church. The guy's name is Shahram Hadian, I believe. This clip that I came with, it's a little bit on the longer side, so we're not going to watch it right now. But he is actually on the SPLC website as a hate... what was it? I have his SPLC website open here. Here's his SPLC page. Shahram Hadian, an ex-Muslim preaching anti-Muslim message. Now, don't get me wrong. I have nothing wrong with being opposed to Islam. I'm opposed to Islam. I don't believe in Islam. I don't think that it's helpful to society in any way, shape, or form, and I would like to help people come out of Islam if possible. But being anti-Muslim and spreading hate about them and making people fear them and all of this other stuff, that seems to be what this guy does, Shahram Hadian. That seems to be his MO. I have no problem with criticizing Islam as a religion. In fact, I encourage that. But hating somebody because of their religion, that's a problem, and that seems to be what this guy's spreading. This clip that I had here, like I said, we don't have time for it right now, but this one is like this unhinged anti-vax rant about how it's the mark of the beast and you can still repent and pray to God for forgiveness and pray to him to save you. And he says that it's going to turn people into non-humans, and that's how you'll lose your salvation, is by no longer being human. All just like Nephilim. It's real unhinged stuff. But that is par for the course with Patriot Church. That's what you can expect with Ken Peters and Shahram Hadian. And I absolutely want to cover more of this guy. Matter of fact, if you're interested, I will probably cover one of his sermons on either Tuesday or Thursday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. And if you can't make it to Twitch to watch it live, watch me talk about some of this stuff, then hopefully you can check out my Telltale Unfiltered YouTube channel, where I'll be uploading the edited version of me reacting to his entire thing, his whole sermon. I'll be covering a JW Broadcasting episode one day, and this guy's another day, probably. But just keep a lookout. You should check out the Twitch. It's twitch.tv/telltaleatheist. And keep a lookout for me covering some of his more bizarre sermons.